feeling that my story's been told. Several people have been suffering though. I'm at the edge of the world and now I'm carrying a raw. Love going wrong, all my pieces be sold.
I'm just trying to make ends meet. Guys, life mawani.
Nobody's listening. Nobody's listening.
Boy, broken. Who do I turn to?
Somebody hear me. Please. Somebody see me.
Is Star FM sounding good all the time? This program is brought to us by Say What, with support from the Embassy of Sweden in Zimbabwe, UNFPA and SAI. On the 25th of March 2024, a man drank poison during a Facebook Live, leaving many hearts broken, and said the suicide rate in Zimbabwe is a significant public health concern. And according to the latest data from the World Health Organization, published in 2020, the suicide deaths in Zimbabwe reached 2,069, accounting for 1.91% of total deaths. Zimbabwe is ranked at number 7 in the world in terms of suicide deaths, and the suicide mortality rate in Zimbabwe was reported at 14.1% in 2019. The increase in suicide cases in Zimbabwe has been attributed to various factors, including severe economic challenges, high unemployment rates, acute cash shortages, infidelity among spouses, and domestic violence. Just different things have been highlighted as the contributing factors to the rising suicide cases, particularly among men. If you or someone you know is suffering from mental health, reach us via 577. We will be there to help you. We want to welcome our guest this morning, talking about alleviating suicide, prioritizing mental health. And you can also hit us up on our WhatsApp platform if you have any questions or contributions. How is your mental health? How is your mental health? Out of 10, how would you rate it? And what's really causing stress, anxiety, depression in your life? You can also hit us up. Joining us live in studio is Niraj and Lisbon. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for making time.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Morning. Thank you for inviting us.
To kickstart our discussion on alleviating suicide and prioritizing mental health, let's start with the fundamental question of the definition itself. What is mental health, and why is it crucial to our overall well-being, Niraj?
Thank you. I really like that question. Mental health is a term that we use when we're talking about someone's well-being, psychological, social well-being. But the question that I like to ask is, what really isn't mental health when we're talking about health in general.
Yeah.
You cannot divorce mental health from health. Our bodies are very intricate systems. Things that affect our bodies affect our brains and ultimately how we think, feel, and act. For example, when you take alcohol, that affects how you think, feel, and act. Same goes with all other drugs. Long ago, there was a big debate about whether the mind and the brain are the same thing, whether the mind is something that's totally separate. So when people talk about mental health, they think about very mushy emotional things, when it is a very scientific subject that has everything to do with our overall health as people. So mental health has everything to do with our physical health as well.
And that's so true. That is so true. Totally agree with that. And coming back to you again, Niraj, when an individual's mental health is disturbed, what are the potential consequences and impacts on their daily life and relationships?
Well, that then depends with exactly how their mental health has been disturbed. I'll go back to the example of alcohol that I just used. We know for a fact that alcohol is a depressant. It may not feel like that when someone initially starts taking alcohol because it releases dopamine, but it also switches off, it interrupts the communication with the part of the brain that's responsible for inhibition, your prefrontal cortex. So some people use that as a crutch in social situations to get rid of anxiety. Someone drinks alcohol because it reduces your inhibition. So how does that affect someone's social well-being? We know for a fact that high alcohol consumption is linked to aggressive behavior, intimate partner violence, that's domestic abuse and so forth, because it reduces social inhibition. When you're intoxicated by alcohol or different substances, you're more likely to engage in risky sexual behaviors that affects your health. You're more likely to contract diseases like HIV and AIDS. So it's a whole cycle. It depends specifically on how your mental health has been affected. So when we are diagnosing someone with a mental health conditions, we look at 4 things primarily. They're called the 4 Ds. So the 4 Ds, we're talking about distress. Is what you're experiencing causing you distress? 2, dysfunction. Are you functioning in the same way that you used to? We know, for example, with depression, a core symptom of depression is anhedonia. You don't find joy in doing things that you usually enjoyed. So you will not function.
What is it called?
Anhedonia.
Okay.
Anhedonia. So in the workplace, for example, you will not function the same way that you used to, because that's a core symptom of depression, for example. So we talked about distress, dysfunction. There's also deviance. Are the actions and behaviors that you are exhibiting typical of any normal human being? If you are diverting from what is normal, then there's a cause for concern. Then the last D that we should talk about is danger. Are you a danger to yourself and others around you because of the condition that you have? So that's how mental health issues can affect how you function in society.
If you're just tuning in, this program is brought to us by Say What. We're looking at alleviating suicide, prioritizing mental health. We're also live on Facebook. You can join the conversation there. Niraj, bringing it to Zimbabwe, in the context of Zimbabwe, what are some prevalent mental health conditions affecting the population, and how can we address these challenges effectively?
All right. So according to the global burden of disease study that was done recently, regionally, our prevalence rates of mental health issues are very similar with other countries in the region. but things like depression are slightly higher in Zimbabwe as compared to other countries in the SADC region. So in Zimbabwe, things that are very prevalent are the common mental health issues. So that's anxiety, depression. You have things that are linked to non-communicable diseases. So things like epilepsy and diabetes, they are strong links. The science suggests that they are highly comorbid with things like depression and anxiety because of how that affects your brain and how you function, and as well as things related to alcohol use. Mental health conditions linked to alcohol use, so things like schizophrenia and psychosis. Also HIV and AIDS, because of how it affects how your brain functions. So those are the most prevalent mental health conditions in our context. How do we deal with them? The best way to deal with things like this is first-line medical treatment. There's also psychosocial support that you can seek for some of these mental health conditions. As a society, we have a role to play in alleviating mental health conditions. I would break it down into 3 parts. Research being the first one. We need more people to get into the space of research, and we need more funding in the space of research so that we understand the problems that we're dealing with and how we can cultivate solutions to our problems from a local standpoint. What are the current trends in the world in terms of mental health, and how does Zimbabwe fit in? So we need more people in the research space. We also, as communities, we also need to look at things. We need to do surveillance, identifying correctly mental health issues. That's a big step in helping reduce issues to do with mental health. So how do I recognize if someone is suicide? Do we even care to recognize whether someone is experiencing burnout or stress or depression or anxiety, or we don't want to know? So platforms like this, where the media is actively participating in educating us as a society about mental health, is a very central thing in terms of adequately dealing with mental health issues. I'll go back again to the issue of investment in mental health. Fortunately enough, our government has been partnering with organizations like Say What and the Ministry of and WHO in participating in things like the mental health initiative. Zimbabwe was one of the first 5 countries in the world to adopt that, where certain researchers show us what an investment in mental health would translate to. Mental health conditions costs us multiple millions of dollars in terms of GDP, because when someone is experiencing mental health issues, they are not as productive as they could be.
They're not functioning to their full capacity, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are not functioning to their full capacity. If I have my numbers correctly, globally, mental health conditions cost us about $1 trillion every year. In Zimbabwe, the number is around 158 million yearly in our GDP. That's the cost that's associated with untreated mental health issues.
Yeah.
And yet the investment in mental health issues is 0.44% of the total national budget on health that's attributed to mental health.
Lisbon, let me bring you into the conversation. We are aware that there are, high rates of suicide among young men in various settings, including colleges, communities. What are some of the leading factors as a young man, contributing to this concerning trend?
Okay, thank you for the question. So firstly, I would like to say that the high rates of suicide amongst young kings and the society can be attributed to different different factors, and these include individuals, communities, and it can be social, it can be environmental. So firstly, I would like to talk about issues to do with mental health, as we are talking about mental health. Panama conditions and there are conditions that were mentioned, which include depression, anxiety, and these conditions have been common to us young kings, probably because of things that we are going through, things that we are facing each and every day. We can talk of issues to do with mjolo, not having meaningful relationships, and maybe.
And I guess we trivialize this issue of mjolo, but then really it's a cause for concern.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It is. So some of those things, and besides kutim mjolo and it, we can also talk about just relationships with our families, relationships with friends. How are these people helping us? How are they supporting us? So if we lack such important relationships, or if we just have my relationships you are just there, you don't even know who you are, not battery, or this person is toxic, or this person is good for me because they can help me in this way and that way. Somehow we end up drowning in some of these issues to do with mental health, and thereby ending up suicidal thoughts. Then we can also talk about issues to do with pressure and stress. So we face different stresses and pressures as young kings. We can talk about issues to do with academic pressure, work pressure. We can talk of stress in maybe issues to do with finances. I'm sure you've heard of a song Yabaga, I think it's called Sango. Panuti ndikashare mari ndoita fever. It's something realistic. So those are some of the things that are contributing, or some of the factors that are leading to my mental health conditions, like depression and anxiety. We can also talk about peer pressure as well. My peers, usually as young kings or as young people, we are influenced by the people around us. Turn out we are quite at this and that. My friends are doing this, are going to my clubs, or my friends are using drugs. So why am I not doing the same? So some of those things, it leads us to maybe taking or making wrong decisions, like maybe ending up abusing drugs and substances. Then we can also talk about stigma and barriers to help seeking. This is in relation to maybe societal expectations of masculinity. The society expects you as young kings to do this and that. The society expects you to be self-sufficient. The society expects you to know every solution to the problems that you're facing. You don't need help, you can do it alone. So those are some of the things that maybe lead us to ending up on our own, being socially isolated, and not having anyone else to confide in, anyone else to share our issues with. And it leads up to it just worsens the situation to end up with my suicidal thoughts, because and now and the burden is overwhelming and too much for me to get along. So yeah, I could say maybe just one last thing maybe is my unresolved traumas, and these can actually initiate my conditions, sort of like such as PTSD. I'm sure you've heard of PTSD. Yeah. So some of those things, like these my unresolved traumas and not getting enough help, they just lead us down the same path that we're talking about today. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. Unfortunately, we are really running out of time. So, Lisbon, I'll let you give your parting shot, and also then come to you, Niraj.
Okay. Thank you. So, what I can just say is maybe we need to partner up, or we need to team up as maybe individuals, as communities, as policy makers, as providers, to come up with effective solutions that promote mental health literacy amongst ourselves and within the community, within the society. If we partner up, if we team up, if we have the same goal, if we have the same mindset, we end up solving issues like stigma related to mental health issues. So yeah, I can say that's all I have for today.
Thank you so much, Lisbon. Niraj, your parting shot in a few seconds.
All right. I just wanted to talk about the spectrum of suicidality, since that was the main focus of this program.
We have like 20 seconds.
20 seconds.
Yes, yeah. So just your parting shot, then we go.
Yeah.
Okay. My parting shot is let's continue to have stronger social bonds.
Yes.
That way we can recognize changes in behaviors in people around us. Let's also continue having discussions like this so that we educate ourselves on mental health issues. That way we can as a society reduce the stigma and be our brother's keepers.
Thank you so much, Niraj. Lisbon, thank you for making time. This program brought to you by Sewat with support from the Embassy of Sweden in Zimbabwe, UNFPA SIE. If you or someone you know is suffering from mental health, reach us via 577. We will be there to help. We'll do this again next week, same time. Thank you for listening.